Before we get started, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video. That way, you'll always stay connected to our stories and never miss the next adventure. The thing about Mondays, and yes, even in space, Mondays still existed, because apparently the universe had a sense of humor and it was terrible, was that they always found a way to get worse. Fiona had been awake for 26 hours straight, piloting her beat-up cargo hauler through 3 jump gates and 2 asteroid fields, delivering medical supplies to a mining colony that barely had enough credits to pay her fuel costs. Her back ached, her coffee had run out somewhere around hour 15, and she was pretty sure she'd been wearing the same flight suit for the past 4 days. She smelled like recycled air and regret. All she wanted, literally, the only thing she wanted in the entire galaxy, was to dock at Orbital Station Meridian 5, clear customs, and collapse in her bunk for the next 12 hours. The universe, as previously established, had other plans. Meridian 5 was one of those massive transit hubs that processed somewhere in the neighborhood of 50,000 beings per cycle. It hung in space like a giant metal flower, all gleaming spokes and rotating sections, with docking bays that could accommodate everything from single-pilot shuttles to colony ships the size of small moons. Fiona had been through here dozens of times. She knew the routine. Dock, scan, stamp, go. Easy. Except today, the security checkpoint looked like someone had kicked over an anthill, and the ants had all decided to form a committee about it. There were lines, long ones, snaking through the terminal in that special kind of chaos that suggested something had gone very, very wrong with someone's day, and that wrongness was now being distributed equally among everyone else. Fiona groaned, joining the back of the queue behind what looked like a family of fleetlings, small, rabbit-eared beings with nervous dispositions and a tendency to startle at loud noises. The younglings were chittering anxiously, their ears swiveling in every direction. "New security protocols," someone muttered behind her. Fiona glanced back to see a Molreen, one of those peaceful slug-like species that moved slowly and spoke even slower. "Implemented this morning. Something about bioweapons? Smuggling?" I wasn't entirely clear on the details. "Of course," Fiona said, because of course there were new protocols. Of course, her simple, straightforward, please just let me sleep docking procedure had been complicated by galactic bureaucracy. "What kind of new protocols?" "Blood scanning," the Molreen said, their eye stalks drooping in what might have been sympathy or exhaustion. Hard to tell with Molreens. "Full genetic workup. They say it only takes a moment, but—" They gestured with one gelatinous appendage at the barely moving line. Fiona closed her eyes and counted to 10. Then to 20. Then she gave up counting and just accepted that this was her life now. The line crawled forward with all the speed and enthusiasm of continental drift. When she finally reached the security checkpoint, Fiona was ready to bite someone. Metaphorically speaking, mostly. The security officer was an Ulari, one of those insect-like species that took protocol very, very seriously. They had compound eyes, clicking mandibles, and an exoskeleton that gleamed under the harsh terminal lighting. Their name tag read Prilmoth, and they looked exactly as thrilled to be there as Fiona felt. "Documentation," Prilmoth said, their voice buzzing through a translator unit. Fiona slapped her ID chip on the scanner. "Fiona, human, cargo hauler. Just came from the Outer Reach colonies, and I would very much like to go home now. Please, and thank you." Prilmoth's mandibles clicked in what might have been acknowledgement. "Retinal scan." Fiona leaned forward, letting the machine scan her eyes. Green light swept across her vision, and the computer beeped its approval. "Thermal scan." Another scanner, this one reading her body temperature. Another beep. And now, blood scan. Prilmoth gestured to a new piece of equipment, something Fiona hadn't seen before. It looked like a standard bioscanner, but bigger, with more blinking lights and an ominous hum that suggested it took itself very seriously. Do I need to do anything special, or place your hand on the pad? Fiona placed her hand on the pad. It was cool against her palm, and she felt a tiny prick, barely noticeable, as it drew a sample. The machine hummed louder, processing. This was fine. This was routine. In approximately 30 seconds, she'd be cleared, and she could finally. The machine made a sound. Not a beep. Not a pleasant little confirmation chime. No, this was a sound that started low and built into something that could only be described as a warning klaxon. The kind of noise that suggested someone had just discovered something very wrong and everyone needed to know about it immediately. Every head in the terminal turned. Fiona blinked. Is that normal? Prilmoth had gone very, very still. Their compound eyes were fixed on the screen, and their mandibles had stopped clicking entirely, which Fiona was pretty sure was the Ulari equivalent of a human's jaw dropping open. What? Fiona said, pulling her hand back from the scanner. What's wrong? The screen was flashing. Bright red text, cycling through what looked like multiple languages, but the Galactic Standard translation was pretty clear. Alpha species detected apex predator classification threat level. Maximum. Fiona stared at the screen, then at Prilmoth, then back at the screen. I'm sorry, she said slowly, but what the actual hell does that mean? Prilmoth's mandibles finally started clicking again, rapid fire, the insectoid equivalent of nervous stammering. I need to call my supervisor. Please remain where you are. Do not move. Do not. They pressed a button on their console, and their voice went up an octave. Supervisor to Checkpoint 9. Supervisor to Checkpoint 9 immediately. We have a situation. A situation, Fiona repeated flatly. I'm a situation now. Around her, the other beings in line were backing away, slowly, carefully, like she might suddenly sprout fangs and start eating people, which was ridiculous. She'd had lunch 3 hours ago. She wasn't even hungry. 2 Growl security guards appeared from somewhere in the terminal's depths, moving with that particular kind of purposeful stride that suggested they were very good at their jobs, and those jobs frequently involved violence. Growls were big, easily 2.5 meters tall, with reptilian features, thick scales, and muscles that looked like they'd been carved from stone. They wore armor that probably cost more than Fiona's entire ship, and they carried plasma rifles that could punch through hull plating. Both of them had their hands on their weapons. Both of them were staring at her. "Ma'am," one of them said, his voice a deep rumble, "we're going to need you to come with us." Fiona looked at the guards, at Prilmoth, who was still staring at the screen like it had personally betrayed them, at the crowd of aliens who were now giving her a very wide berth. "I just want to go home," she said, and she was proud of how calm her voice sounded, because internally she was screaming. "I've been flying for 26 hours. I'm tired. I smell bad. And I have no idea what that machine is talking about because I'm a cargo hauler, not a whatever alpha species means." "Ma'am," the second guard said, and his hand tightened on his rifle. "Please come with us. We can discuss this in a more secure location." The first guard leaned slightly toward his partner and muttered, just loud enough for Fiona to hear, "Is it true? I've never seen that classification before." "Only appeared 3 times in recorded galactic history," the second guard muttered back. All extinct species. Didn't think anything alive could trigger it. Extinct species. Maximum threat level. Apex predator. Fiona was a cargo hauler who survived on instant noodles and spite. She once got winded jogging to catch a transport. She had a plant in her ship that she'd managed to keep alive for 6 months, and she was unreasonably proud of that fact. She was not a threat to galactic security. "Look," she said, raising her hands slowly, because those were very big guns and she was very tired. "There's obviously been some kind of mistake. Maybe the machine's broken. Have you tried turning it off and on again?" Prillmoth made a sound like a kettle boiling over. "The machine does not make mistakes. The machine is calibrated daily. The machine is apparently having a very bad day, just like me," Fiona finished. "So how about we all take a breath, figure out what's going on, and—" "Ma'am." The first guard stepped closer, and there was something in his eyes that Fiona didn't like. Not aggression, exactly. More like wariness. The kind of look you'd give something dangerous that you weren't entirely sure how to handle. "Please, come with us. Now." Fiona looked at the guards, at their weapons, at the crowd of aliens watching with a mixture of fear and fascination. She looked at the screen, still flashing its dire warnings, and she thought, with the kind of weary resignation that only came from 26 hours without sleep, this is going to be a really, really long day. "Fine," she said, lowering her hands. "Lead the way. But I'm filing a complaint about this, just so you know." A very strongly worded complaint. The guards exchanged a glance, the kind of glance that said they'd heard that before and weren't particularly worried about it, and gestured for her to follow. As they escorted her through the terminal, Fiona caught sight of her reflection in one of the polished metal walls. She looked exactly like what she was: exhausted, rumpled, and thoroughly done with the universe's nonsense. She looked, in other words, completely harmless. The machine, apparently, disagreed, and somewhere in the back of her mind, in that little voice that sounded suspiciously like her grandmother, Fiona heard, "Well, kiddo, you wanted an interesting life. Careful what you wish for." "I hate Mondays," Fiona muttered, as the guards led her deeper into the station. Behind her, the security checkpoint's alarm was still blaring, and Prillmoth was frantically trying to explain to the next person in line why there was going to be a delay. The universe, as always, was laughing. The secure location turned out to be a holding area deep in the station's administrative section, the kind of place where the walls were too clean, and the lighting was too bright, and everything smelled faintly of disinfectant and anxiety. There were no bars. This wasn't a cell, the guards insisted, though the locked door and armed presence suggested otherwise. Just a table, 2 chairs, and a whole lot of uncomfortable silence. Fiona sat in one of the chairs and tried very hard not to think about how badly this day had gone off the rails. The guard stood by the door, still watching her with that wary expression, like she might suddenly transform into something with more teeth and fewer morals. One of them kept his hand near his weapon. Not on it, exactly, but close enough to matter. "So," Fiona said, because silence made her nervous, and she'd never been good at keeping her mouth shut. "Do I get a lawyer? A phone call? A snack? I'm not picky, but I've been up for a while and my blood sugar's probably doing interesting things." The guards didn't respond. Professional, stoic, absolutely no fun at all. "Right, strong, silent types. Got it." 20 minutes passed. Then 30. Fiona was seriously considering taking a nap right there at the table. She'd slept in worse places. When the door finally opened, the woman who walked in was human, which was both a relief and somehow more concerning. She was tall, with dark skin and hair pulled back in a neat bun, wearing the kind of practical jumpsuit that suggested she worked in a lab and took her job very seriously. She carried a datapad and had the look of someone who'd been woken up early and wasn't happy about it. "Fiona," the woman said, not quite a question. "That's me. And you are?" "Dr. Imara Okonkwo, xenobiologist, Galactic Council Liaison for Human Integration." She pulled out the other chair and sat down, placing her datapad on the table between them. "We need to talk about your scan results. The ones that say I'm apparently a galactic threat? Yeah, I have some questions about those." Imara's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Concern, maybe, or fascination. With scientists, it was hard to tell. "The classification isn't wrong exactly. It's just complicated." "I'm a cargo hauler," Fiona said flatly. "I move boxes from point A to point B. I'm not complicated. I'm the opposite of complicated. I'm aggressively simple." "You're human." "Last time I checked, yeah." Imara tapped something on her datapad, and a holographic display flickered to life above the table. It showed a genetic readout, all spiraling helixes and color-coded markers that meant absolutely nothing to Fiona. Humans are relatively new to the galactic community. 32 cycles, give or take. Most species had thousands of cycles to integrate, to be studied, to be understood before they were granted full transit rights. And we got rushed through because you showed up with faster-than-light travel and a distressing tendency to befriend anything that would sit still long enough. Imara's lips twitched, almost a smile. "The Council decided it was better to integrate you quickly than risk you doing something unpredictable." "We're very friendly," Fiona agreed. "Aggressively friendly, some might say. So what does that have to do with the machine calling me an apex predator?" Imara leaned back in her chair, and for the first time, she looked genuinely uncomfortable. Most species in the galactic community evolved as prey animals, herd creatures, or environmental specialists. Fleetlings, for example, prey species. Fast, nervous, excellent hearing. Molreens, environmental specialists, adapted to low-gravity swamp worlds. Even the Growls, who look intimidating, evolved as territorial herbivores. They're aggressive, yes, but defensively so. Okay. True apex predators are rare among spacefaring civilizations, Imara continued. The theory is that species with strong predatory instincts tend to destroy themselves before they achieve interstellar travel. Too much aggression, not enough cooperation. The few that made it to space— She gestured at the hologram, which shifted to show 3 alien species Fiona didn't recognize. All extinct now. The last one vanished about 2,000 cycles ago. Fiona stared at the hologram, at the 3 extinct species frozen in time. And humans are like them? The alpha species classification looks at a combination of factors: binocular vision, forward-facing eyes, depth perception, the kind of vision a hunter needs, endurance capabilities. Humans are persistence hunters, did you know that? You can run prey to exhaustion over long distances. Adaptable diet, problem-solving intelligence, and something the Council calls pursuit instinct. Imara met Fiona's eyes. The refusal to give up once you've decided on a goal. "I once gave up on a jigsaw puzzle after 20 minutes, Fiona said. "I'm not that persistent." It's not about individual behavior. It's about species-wide evolutionary traits. Humans are apex predators, Fiona. You evolved at the top of your food chain. You have the instincts, the biology, the psychology of a hunter. The room felt smaller suddenly, colder. "So what?" Fiona said. and her voice came out harder than she intended. So, what if we're predators? We're also artists and engineers and people who cry at sad movies. We're not monsters. I know that, Imara said quietly. I'm human too, remember? But the council doesn't know that. Not really. They see the classification, they see the history of extinct predator species, and they're scared. Before Fiona could respond, the door opened again, and a hologram flickered into existence at the head of the table. It showed a being that looked like a jellyfish had gotten into a fight with a chandelier and somehow achieved sentience. Translucent, floating, with trailing tendrils that glowed faintly blue. Magistrate Ulfin, Imara said, standing quickly. I wasn't expecting Dr. Okonkwo. The magistrate's voice was calm, almost soothing, which somehow made it worse. And this must be our anomaly. My name's Fiona, Fiona said, staying seated because she was tired and annoyed and not particularly inclined to show deference to a floating jellyfish. And I'm not an anomaly. I'm a person who had a really bad day and would like to go home now. Ulfin's tendrils rippled in what might have been amusement. I'm afraid that won't be possible. The council has reviewed your scan results, and we've decided that you need to be placed under observation for assessment purposes. Assessment, Fiona repeated. You mean quarantine? A temporary measure, I assure you. We simply need to understand what humans are capable of, what you might become. We're capable of being really annoying when we don't get enough sleep, Fiona said. And we might become very cranky if you don't let us go home. That's what we're capable of. Imara put a hand on Fiona's shoulder, a warning. Magistrate, with respect, Fiona has rights under the Transit Accords. You can't just detain her without cause. The cause is galactic security, Ulfin said, and his voice was still calm, still reasonable, which made Fiona want to punch something. Surely you understand, Doctor. Your species is an unknown variable, a potentially dangerous one. We've been part of the galactic community for 3 decades, Imara said. We've caused no problems. We've followed every protocol, every regulation. And yet the machine says otherwise. Ulfin's hologram drifted closer to Fiona. Tell me, Fiona, have you ever felt the urge to hunt, to chase, to pursue something until you catch it? Fiona thought about lying, about saying no, about playing the harmless cargo hauler who just wanted to go home. But she was tired, and she was angry, and she'd never been good at lying anyway. Yeah, she said. Sometimes, when I'm working on a problem or trying to fix something on my ship, or when I'm playing a game and I'm losing. I don't give up. I keep going until I win or until I figure it out. Is that what you mean? Ulfin's tendrils went very still. Yes, that is exactly what I mean. That's not a crime, Fiona said. That's just being stubborn. It's the instinct of a predator, Ulfin said, and it makes you dangerous. The alarm started blaring before Fiona could respond. A different alarm, deeper, more urgent. The kind that meant something had gone very, very wrong. The guards by the door immediately went on alert, weapons drawn, and Imara's datapad lit up with emergency notifications. Breach in the lower docks, one of the guards said, pressing a hand to his comm unit. Multiple hostiles. Rathic swarm. Ulfin's hologram flickered. Secure the area. I want... But Fiona wasn't listening anymore. Because the door was open, the guards were distracted, and she'd just been told she had the instincts of a hunter. Time to test that theory. She moved. Moving turned out to be easier than expected, mostly because nobody was expecting the dangerous predator to bolt for the door while everyone was focused on the alarm. Fiona slipped past the first guard, who made a grab for her but missed by a solid few inches, ducked under the second guard's arm, and was out into the corridor before anyone could shout at her to stop. Behind her, she heard Imara yelling something, probably her name, possibly a warning, but Fiona was already running. The maintenance corridors of Meridian 5 were a maze of narrow passages and service tunnels that most passengers never saw. Fiona had used them before. Cargo haulers learned the backways of every major station, the routes that avoided customs checkpoints and nosy officials, and her feet carried her on autopilot, while her brain tried to catch up with what she'd just done. She'd run. From Galactic Council security. From a magistrate who could probably make her life very difficult. But staying in that room, being assessed like some kind of lab specimen while pirates attacked the station, that hadn't been an option. Whatever else she was, whatever the machine said about her, Fiona wasn't the kind of person who sat still while things went wrong around her. The alarm was still, blaring, echoing through the metal corridors. Emergency lighting had kicked in, bathing everything in red. Somewhere in the distance, she heard weapons fire, the sharp crack of plasma rifles, the deeper boom of something heavier. Fiona slowed to a jog, then a walk, pressing herself against the wall and trying to think. Her ship was docked in Bay 12, which was... She checked the corridor markings, 3 sections away. If she could get there, get aboard, she could seal the airlock and wait out whatever was happening. Let station security handle the pirates. Let the council handle their fears about apex predators. She'd be safe. She took 2 steps toward Bay 12 before she heard the crying. It was quiet, muffled, coming from somewhere ahead, and to the left. The kind of sound someone made when they were trying very hard not to be heard, but couldn't quite manage it. Fiona stopped, closed her eyes, counted to 3. This is not your problem, she told herself. You have a ship. You have an escape route. You have every reason to get out of here and let someone else handle this. The crying continued. Damn it. She followed the sound. The maintenance junction opened into a small storage area, the kind of place where cleaning supplies and spare parts got stashed and forgotten. Huddled behind a stack of crates were 5 aliens, all of them looking absolutely terrified. Fiona recognized 2 of the species, a fleetling, small and rabbit-eared, with fur that had gone pale with fear, and a molreen, their gelatinous body quivering. The other 3 were species she didn't know, but they all had the same expression. Pure, undiluted panic. Hey, Fiona said softly, raising her hands to show she wasn't a threat. It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you. The fleetling made a sound somewhere between a squeak and a sob. The pirates! They're hunting through the station. They're taking people. I know. I heard the alarm. Fiona crouched down, making herself smaller, less threatening. Are you hurt? Any of you? They shook their heads, a universal gesture even across species. Okay. Good. That's good. Fiona's mind was racing, running through options. Do you know where they are? The pirates? Everywhere, the molreen said, their voice a wet whisper. They came through the lower docks, spread out through the station. We ran, but we don't know where to go. Security is overwhelmed. The corridors aren't safe. Fiona thought about her ship, about Bay 12, 3 sections away, about the smart, sensible thing to do, which was save herself and let trained security personnel handle the crisis. Then she looked at the 5 terrified aliens huddled behind crates, and she thought about what Imara had said, about pursuit instinct, about the refusal to give up once you'd decided on a goal. All right, she said, and something in her voice must have changed, because all 5 aliens looked at her with sudden, desperate hope. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to get you somewhere safe, somewhere the pirates can't reach you. And then, she paused, because she hadn't actually thought this far ahead. And then, we're going to figure out the rest. You're human, the fleetling said, and their ears were standing straight up now, quivering. The species that the machine said, yeah, I'm human. And right now, that's either going to be really good news or really bad news, depending on how this goes. Fiona stood up, scanning the storage area. What's your name? Pim. Okay, Pim, I'm Fiona. And I need you to trust me, because I'm about to do some things that are going to seem scary, but I promise I'm on your side. She grabbed a length of pipe from a nearby shelf, testing its weight. Not ideal, but better than nothing. Everyone stay close, stay quiet, and if I tell you to run, you run. Got it? They nodded, still terrified, but there was something else in their eyes now, something that looked almost like trust. Fiona hoped she deserved it. They moved through the corridors in a tight group, Fiona at the front with her improvised weapon. The station's layout was burned into her memory from dozens of previous visits, and she navigated by instinct, avoiding the main passages and sticking to the maintenance routes. Twice they heard pirates nearby, harsh voices, the clang of boots on metal, and both times Fiona found hiding spots, pressing the group into alcoves or behind equipment while the danger passed. The third time, they weren't fast enough. 3 Rothic rounded the corner just as Fiona's group was crossing a junction. The pirates were exactly as unpleasant as their reputation suggested. Scaled, hunched, with too many teeth and weapons that looked like they'd been cobbled together from scrap and malice. They wore mismatched armor and had the kind of swagger that came from knowing they were the most dangerous things in the room. Usually, the lead Rothic saw them and grinned, showing all those teeth. Well, well, looks like we found some stragglers. Boss said to round up anyone we find. You lot are coming with... Fiona hit him with the pipe. She didn't think about it, didn't plan it. Just moved. 3 steps forward, swing from the shoulder, aim for the head. The pipe connected with a sound like a bell being struck, and the Rothic went down hard. The other 2 pirates stared at her, shocked. Fiona stared back, and something cold and focused settled over her thoughts. The exhaustion was still there. The fear was still there, but underneath it was something else. Something that looked at the 2 remaining pirates and calculated angles, distances, threat levels. Something that knew how to hunt. Run, she told the aliens behind her, not taking her eyes off the pirates. Now. She heard them scatter, heard Pim's frightened squeak, but her attention was on the Rothic. They'd recovered from their shock and were raising their weapons. Crude plasma, pistols, the kind that were more likely to explode in your hand than hit their target, but still dangerous. Fiona moved before they could fire. She wasn't faster than them, wasn't stronger. But she'd spent 26 hours piloting through asteroid fields, making split-second decisions, and her body knew how to react before her brain caught up. She ducked low, came up inside the second pirate's guard, and drove her elbow into what she hoped was something vital. The Rothic made a choking sound and stumbled back. The third pirate got a shot off. The plasma bolt went wide, scorching the wall behind Fiona. And then she was on him, using the pipe like a club, like a lever, like whatever she needed it to be. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't elegant. But 30 seconds later, all 3 pirates were on the ground, groaning. And Fiona was standing over them with her pipe and a growing sense of what the hell did I just do? Her hands were shaking. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. She'd just taken down 3 armed pirates with a piece of pipe and adrenaline. "Fiona?" Pym's voice, small and scared, came from around the corner. Are you okay?" Fiona looked at her hands, at the pipe, at the pirates. "Yeah," she said, and her voice sounded strange even to her own ears. "Yeah, I'm okay. You can come out." The group emerged slowly, staring at the downed pirates with wide eyes. "You fought them," the Mulrine said, and there was something like awe in their voice. "You hunted them." "I defended us," Fiona corrected. But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't quite true. She hadn't just defended. She'd attacked. She'd seen a threat, and she'd eliminated it with an efficiency that scared her a little. Maybe the machine had been right after all. "We need to keep moving," she said, pushing the thought away. "There'll be more of them." They found 6 more civilians in the next section, a maintenance worker, 2 merchants, and a family of some species Fiona didn't recognize. All of them were hiding, terrified, waiting for security that wasn't coming. Fiona's group was growing. She led them through the station, and with each corridor, each junction, she felt something shifting in her head. The layout of Meridian 5 wasn't just a map anymore. It was a tactical grid. She saw choke points, ambush locations, places where the environment could be used as a weapon. When they encountered another patrol of Rothic, Fiona didn't hesitate. She used the station itself against them, venting steam from a damaged pipe to blind them, cutting power to a section to create darkness, herding them into a dead-end corridor where her improvised weapons and desperate fury could make up for their superior numbers. The aliens she was protecting watched with a mixture of horror and fascination. "The machine was right," Pym whispered, after the second fight, when Fiona was catching her breath and trying not to think about the bruises she'd have tomorrow. "You really are a predator," Fiona wanted to argue, wanted to say she was just doing what anyone would do, that this wasn't special, wasn't significant. But she'd seen the way the other aliens fought, or rather, didn't fight. They froze. They fled. They hid. All perfectly reasonable responses to danger, all the instincts of prey species trying to survive. Fiona's instincts were different. When she saw danger, she didn't think about running. She thought about winning. "Come on," she said, helping Pym to their feet. "We're not done yet." They moved deeper into the station, gathering more survivors, and Fiona felt her group becoming something else. Not just refugees, not just victims. A pack, and she was leading them. The main security hub was 3 sections away, and if they could reach it, they'd be safe. Reinforced doors, armed guards, communication equipment to call for help. All they had to do was get there. All they had to do was survive. Fiona gripped her pipe. She'd upgraded to a heavier one after the last fight and kept moving forward. Behind her, a dozen aliens followed, and for the first time since the alarm started, Fiona thought they might actually make it. The universe, apparently, wasn't done laughing yet. The security hub was supposed to be a fortress. Reinforced walls, blast doors, enough firepower to hold off a small army. It was the kind of place you retreated to when everything else had gone wrong. The last line of defense before you started evacuating the station. When Fiona and her ragtag group of survivors rounded the final corner, they found it under siege. A dozen Rothic pirates were clustered around the main entrance, taking pot shots at the sealed blast doors and occasionally lobbing something that exploded with enough force to make Fiona's teeth rattle. Inside, she could see movement through the reinforced windows, security personnel, station staff, and what looked like Imara's distinctive silhouette. They'd made it to safety. They just couldn't get in. "Well," Fiona muttered, "that's inconvenient." Pym pressed close to her side, ears flat against their head. What do we do? Good question. Fiona had approximately one pipe, a collection of terrified civilians, and the kind of exhaustion that made thinking feel like wading through mud. The smart move would be to find another route, circle around, avoid the fight entirely. But the pirates were between her people and safety, and Fiona had discovered over the past hour that she was really, really bad at backing down. "We go through them," she said. The Meridian made a sound like a deflating balloon. "Through them? There are 12 of them. They have guns. We have—" They looked at Fiona's pipe. "A piece of metal." "We have more than that." Fiona turned to face her group. And when had she started thinking of them as hers? And saw a dozen faces looking back at her with varying degrees of terror and trust. "We have surprise. We have numbers. And we have the fact that they're not expecting anyone to be stupid enough to attack them." "Are we?" one of the merchants asked. "Stupid enough, I mean?" "Probably," Fiona admitted, "but I'm too tired to think of a better plan. So we're going with this one." She pointed at the maintenance access panel on the wall. "That leads to the environmental systems. If we can get into the ducts, we can come up behind them, hit them from two sides at once." "And then what?" Pym asked. "And then we improvise really, really hard." It took 10 minutes to get everyone into position. Half the group, the ones who were small enough to fit through the ducts, went with Pym through the maintenance access. The other half stayed with Fiona, armed with whatever they could find: pipes, tools, a fire extinguisher that looked like it had seen better days. Fiona waited until she saw movement in the duct grating above the pirates. Waited until Pym's face appeared, pale and terrified, but determined. Then she stepped out into the corridor and cleared her throat. 12 Rothic pirates turned to look at her. "Hi," Fiona said. "I'm having a really bad day and you're making it worse. I'd appreciate it if you'd leave." For a moment, nobody moved. The pirates stared at her like she'd just sprouted a second head. One of them started laughing, a harsh, grating sound. "You're joking," the pirate said. "You're actually joking. One human with a pipe. And you think—" Fiona whistled, sharp and loud. The duct grating exploded outward as Pym and the others dropped down onto the pirates from above. It wasn't graceful. The fleetling landed on one pirate's head and started kicking frantically, while the Meridian sort of oozed onto another one. But it was effective. The pirates scattered, confused, trying to figure out what was happening. Fiona charged. She'd learned something over the past hour, something the machine had apparently known all along. Humans were really, really good at not giving up. Every time she got hit, every time she got knocked down, her body just kept going, kept fighting, kept moving forward with a stubbornness that bordered on insanity. The pirates had weapons, they had armor, they had numbers. But Fiona had momentum, and she had a dozen terrified civilians who'd decided that following a crazy human was better than dying alone. The fight was chaos, pure, unfiltered chaos. Fiona lost her pipe in the first 30 seconds and ended up using a pirate's own weapon against him. She had no idea how to fire it, so she just hit him with it until he stopped moving. Pym was a blur of fur and fury, using their powerful legs to kick at anything that got close. The Meridian had somehow gummed up a pirate's weapon with their gelatinous body. It was messy. It was desperate. It was absolutely nothing like the action movies Fiona had watched as a kid. But it was working. The blast doors opened. Growl security guards poured out, weapons raised, and the remaining pirates took one look at the reinforcements and decided they'd had enough. They scattered, running back toward the lower docks, and Fiona let them go because she was too busy trying to remember how to breathe. "Fiona!" Amara was there suddenly, grabbing her arm, checking her for injuries. "What were you thinking? You could have been killed." "Was thinking," Fiona panted, that those people needed help, and that I was really tired of running. Prillmoth appeared behind Imara, mandibles clicking rapidly. The human fought. The human hunted. The human led a pack against superior numbers, and won. The human has a name, Fiona said, but there wasn't much heat in it. She was too exhausted. More security personnel were flooding into the corridor now, securing the area, checking on the civilians. Fiona saw her group being led to safety, saw Pym looking back at her with something like worship in their eyes, and felt a complicated mix of pride and discomfort. She just wanted to help. She hadn't meant to become whatever this was. A hologram flickered into existence in front of her. Magistrate Ulfen, looking exactly as calm and unruffled as before, which was deeply annoying. "Fiona," the magistrate said, "we've been monitoring the security feeds." "Of course you have," Fiona muttered. "Your actions today have been illuminating." Ulfen's tendrils rippled in what might have been approval or concern, hard to tell with jellyfish. "The Council has been watching, analyzing, and we've come to a conclusion. Let me guess, I'm dangerous and you want to lock me up?" "No." Ulfen drifted closer, and for the first time, his voice held something other than clinical detachment. "We were wrong." Fiona blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "The alpha species classification," Ulfen continued. "We interpreted it as a threat assessment, a warning that humans were dangerous to the galactic community. But we misunderstood what the machine was telling us." Imara was nodding, her datapad out, showing readouts that Fiona was too tired to parse. "The classification isn't about being a threat to the galaxy. It's about being a threat for the galaxy, a protector." "The 3 previous alpha species in our records," Ulfen said, and his hologram shifted to show those same extinct aliens Fiona had seen before. "They didn't destroy themselves through aggression. They died defending others, fighting threats that would have consumed entire sectors. They were guardians, Fiona, and they were legendary." Fiona looked at the holograms, at the extinct species who'd apparently been heroes. "They're all dead." "Yes, but they saved countless lives before they fell. And their legacy—" Ulfen's tendrils glowed brighter. "Their legacy is why the machine has that classification at all. It's not a warning. It's a recognition." "Of what?" "Of what you did today. You saw people in danger, and you didn't run. You didn't hide. You gathered them, protected them, led them to safety. You hunted the hunters." Imara's voice was soft. "That's what apex predators do when they're not just surviving. When they're thriving. They protect their pack." Fiona thought about the past hour, about Pym and the Molreen and all the others who'd followed her through the station, about the way she'd felt leading them, fighting for them, about the way it had felt right. "So what now?" she asked. "You want me to be some kind of galactic guardian? Fight pirates and save the day?" "We want to offer you a position with galactic security," Ulfen said. "A formal role. Training, resources, support. You'd be—" "No." The magistrate's tendrils went still. "No?" "No. I'm a cargo hauler. I have routes to run, deliveries to make, a ship that needs constant maintenance because she's held together with duct tape and optimism." Fiona crossed her arms. "I'm not a soldier. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who had a really bad day and did what needed doing." But, Fiona interrupted, "if things get really bad, if there's a situation where you need someone who's too stubborn to quit and too stupid to run, you can call me. I'll be on call. Emergency use only." Ulfen was quiet for a long moment, Then his tendrils rippled in what was definitely amusement. "You're negotiating with the Galactic Council." "I'm setting boundaries," Fiona corrected. "There's a difference." "Very well. Emergency use only. We'll establish a communication protocol." The magistrate's hologram started to fade. "And Fiona, thank you for proving us wrong about what it means to be an apex predator." The hologram vanished, leaving Fiona alone with Imara and a corridor full of security personnel who were all very carefully not staring at her. "You know they're going to tell stories about this," Imara said quietly. "The human who fought off pirates with a pipe and a bad attitude? Great. Just what I needed. Fame." Fiona started walking toward the docks, toward her ship, toward the sleep she'd been chasing for the past 30 hours. "I'm going home. I'm going to shower. I'm going to sleep for 16 hours. And then I'm going to pretend this day never happened." She made it 5 steps before Pym appeared, practically bouncing with nervous energy. "Fiona, I was hoping—" The fleetling's ears were doing complicated things. "Can I come with you?" Fiona stopped, turned, looked at the small, rabbit-eared alien who'd followed her through a war zone. "Come with me? I want to learn. To be like you. To be brave." Pym's voice dropped to a whisper. "To be pack." And there it was. That word again. Pack. Fiona thought about her small ship, her solitary routes, her carefully maintained independence. Thought about how much easier it was to be alone, to not be responsible for anyone else. Then she thought about the past hour, about fighting alongside Pym and the others, about how right it had felt to have people depending on her. "I don't have a spare bunk," she said. Pym's ears drooped. "But I guess you can take the cargo bay. It's not comfortable, but it's warm. And you're doing your own laundry." The fleetling's ears shot straight up. "Really? You mean it?" "Yeah, I mean it. But we're setting ground rules. And rule 1 is that you let me sleep for at least 12 hours before you ask me any questions. Deal?" "Deal," Fiona sighed, feeling the weight of the day settling onto her shoulders. She'd been scanned, detained, chased by pirates, fought a small war, and apparently adopted a stray alien. Mondays, she decided, were absolutely the worst. But as she walked toward her ship with Pym bouncing along beside her, chattering excitedly about everything and nothing, Fiona found herself smiling. Maybe being an apex predator wasn't about being dangerous. Maybe it was about being dangerous for the right reasons, about protecting the people who needed it, about refusing to give up when things got hard, about being pack. "Hey, Pym?" "Yes?" "Welcome aboard." The galaxy, somewhere in the distance, had stopped laughing. It was watching now, waiting to see what humans would do next. Fiona's ship jumped to light speed, carrying a cargo hauler, a fleetling, and the beginning of something that might have been legendary, or might have just been a really weird friendship. Either way, Fiona was too tired to care. She had deliveries to make, after all, and incident reports to file. So many incident reports. The universe could wait until after her nap.